Tonight on The Readout.
I'm a little disappointed, to be clear. And I think that's just a natural reality.
Well, that didn't turn out exactly how I wanted it to.
It sure didn't. And as Republicans like Glenn Youngkin and Daniel Cameron lick their wounds, Democrats celebrate big victories in yesterday's elections, with voters sending a clear message to Republicans. Abortion is still a big problem for you. Also tonight, Ivanka Trump found a babysitter, allowing her to take the stand today in the New York civil fraud trial, bringing with her a three-word phrase that got a lot of use: I don't recall. Plus, breaking news tonight, the Pentagon says the U.S. has carried out another airstrike in Syria following attacks against U.S. personnel in that region. But we begin tonight with a message for Republicans. And I don't know who needs to hear this in the Republican Party, since y'all keep trying, even though voters keep telling you over and over and over again. But abortion is a big problem for you. That should be the message Republicans take away from Tuesday's big night for Democrats, as voters sent a resounding message that no matter what Sam Alito and his fellow commanders of Gilead want, stripping half the population of control of their own bodies and reproductive decisions is a massive loser for Republicans. And when voters get the chance to vote to protect that basic right, they're going to do it, whether their state is blue, purple, or red. Abortion rights were the driving issue in elections up and down Tuesday's ballots. Let's start with Virginia. Voters there rejected Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin's genius plan to prime America for a, quote, reasonable national abortion ban. Democrats blocked the Republican takeover of state government, retaining control of the state Senate and flipping control of the Virginia House of Delegates. That will put an end to Glenn Youngkin's plans for a 15-week abortion ban in Virginia and to Republican big money donors' fever dream that the vest-wearing, book-banning finance guy will rescue the party, beat Trump in a late primary, and glide into the White House, having cracked the abortion ban cheat code. It was a hard no for Virginia last night. Meanwhile, in deep red Kentucky, abortion was also at the forefront. Incumbent Democratic Governor Andy Beshear mollywopped State Attorney General Daniel Cameron, defeating him by 5 points in a state Donald Trump won by 26 points in 2020. Cameron is best known outside of Kentucky for refusing to seek justice against the police officers who killed Breonna Taylor. Kentucky voters rejected him in part because of his support for Kentucky's sweeping abortion ban. But Governor Beshear also bucked the national media narrative that the Democratic Party is in trouble following some disappointing polling numbers for President Biden this week. Kentucky voters also rejected Republican efforts to weaponize the culture wars, rejecting anti-transgender attacks on Governor Beshear, who'd vetoed a pair of anti-trans bills in the state. Those attacks also failed in Virginia, where voters also made history, electing the state's first transgender state senator, Danica Roem, one of several historic firsts last night. Sherelle Parker was elected the first woman mayor of Philadelphia. Rhode Island elected its first black U.S. representative, Gabe Amo. And in New York City, Dr. Yusuf Salaam, one of the exonerated 5, won a seat on the city council. And while it was almost all good news for Democrats, in Mississippi, Democrat Brandon Presley, a distant cousin of Elvis, narrowly lost to incumbent Governor Tate Reeves amid voting problems. Polling places ran out of ballots in, surprise, surprise, largely black communities in Mississippi's largest county, encompassing the capital, Jackson. You know, where the water stopped working properly earlier this year and where the nearly all-white state leadership seized control of the police. Perhaps the most resounding victory for abortion rights came in another red state, Ohio, which had a direct abortion question on the ballot. Voters there overwhelmingly said yes to enshrining abortion rights in their state constitution by 14 points. And yet, despite that raft of evidence that abortion is a losing issue for Republicans everywhere, some of them still seem to be not getting the message.
Daniel Cameron was a rising star in the Republican Party until he decided to throw his lot in with Donald Trump. I mean, let's face it, Donald Trump is political and electoral poison down ballot.
Democrats are trying to scare women into thinking Republicans don't want abortion legal under any circumstances.
What an epic failure by Governor Youngkin. This is a huge loss.
You put
very sexy things like abortion and marijuana on the ballot, and a lot of young people come out and vote. It was a secret sauce for disaster in Ohio. Thank goodness that most of the states in this country don't allow you to put everything on the ballot, because pure democracies are not the way to run a country.
We have a very distinguished panel to discuss all of this. Former Senator Claire McCaskill, David Plouffe, former Obama campaign manager, Charlie Sykes, editor-at-large of The Bulwark, and Jason Johnson, professor of politics and journalism at Morgan State University. Claire, I'm going to start with you. Let's get through some of these polls. I mean, very sexy things like abortion.
Yeah.
Sexy.
You know, and this is from a guy who has been a radical on this subject, Santorum, forever.
Yeah.
And what he's basically saying is, we do not agree with the majority of America, so therefore we must keep the majority of America from speaking on this topic.
Yeah. Democracy is a bad thing, per Santorum.
With Roe being overturned, this discussion changed from a theoretical to real for women in America.
Yeah.
And anybody, I read this morning in the Wall Street Journal, some political genius out of Virginia, Republican consultant, said, well, this won't be that big of an issue next year. I got a newsflash for you. This issue is not going away.
Yeah.
The women of this country and many of the men do not like their freedom being taken away, do not want the government in this very personal, delicate, difficult situation. They don't want the government there. And they're going to vote that way, and it's going to be a big winner for the Democrats next year.
And the thing is, you know, David Plouffe, it's not just a big winner among Democrats. It's a big winner in Republican states, in red states, in Ohio. Let me just read you some of these exit polls in Ohio. NBC exit polls. Ohio women 18 to 44, 74% voted to enshrine abortion in the Constitution. Ohio women over 45. It's less, but it's still 52%. No, 48. Go down to, by education. These are white voters in Ohio. I think only about 7% of the electorate was black, so white voters were the vast majority. White women college graduates, 63% yes. White women non-college graduates were the ones who were 50-50. White male college graduates, 57% yes. It's really only white men without college degrees that were in the 40s. Everyone else was in the 50s or above. Last thing I will read to you from Ohio voters. How do you feel about the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade? The largest percentage in the pluralities was angry. 38%, 22% dissatisfied. David Plouffe, I don't know how much more data Republicans would need to understand that the American people in the majority do not want women's bodies controlled by the state. I don't understand what else to tell them. Do you?
Well, and I just want to underscore what Claire said. I think Republicans will try and run away from this issue, but there's no running away from it. The American people believe this is one of the most important issues. They're proven they're going to vote on it. And if Trump is on the top of the ticket, Roe v. Wade was overturned largely because the Supreme Court justices that he nominated. You know, he owns this. He's kind of the godfather of the decision that overturned Roe v. Wade. I will say this, obviously a great result for Democrats. We should celebrate that. We have a lot of history now going back to 22 that this issue drives. But like in Ohio, that was an election just on abortion. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think Democrats now, sadly, wasn't too long ago that we were competitive in Ohio, and hopefully Sherrod Brown can hold on to his seat. And I think he will. But, you know, we lose a lot of races in that state by 10 points. So the nerd in me thinks as you look at these races, whether it's Kentucky, which was a straight up candidate race, Ohio, the Virginia legislative races, there's a whole bunch of voters there that voted the Democratic side or progressive side that currently aren't saying they're going to vote for Joe Biden or the Democratic candidates. That is a data and research gold mine, you know, to know who they are and what you can do to close the sale. The other thing I'd say is, you know, Democrats, and this wasn't always the case for most of my career, quite frankly, but do perform really well now in lower turnout elections. Mm-hmm. We know if Trump's top of the ticket, his turnout's coming next year. And so that's going to be the challenge, is we have to not just do what we need to do with swing voters. And I think abortion can play a big role in that, but we also have to do what we need to do on turnout. And I think that's the biggest concern. We got plenty of time to address it. But that's, if things don't go like we'd like to next November, I think that's going to be the factor.
And well, let me go to you on this, Jason, because that's a good point. One of the things that Democrats do have an advantage over Republicans is candidate quality. let's just. I mean, Andy Bashir he comes from one of the, you know, it's probably the gold ticket surname to have in the state of Kentucky. His father was governor, very popular. And the other piece of it is, it proves that the things you deliver actually matter. maintaining Obamacare, which they call Connect, which they very wisely didn't call Obamacare. And it's popular. And when his predecessor tried to get rid of it, that is how Andy Beshear beat him the first time. That's how he became governor, was beating the guy who tried to take away Kentuckians' health care. So candidate quality matters, right? But talk about that from the Beshear angle, but also in the Youngkin angle for Republicans. They saw him as their high-quality candidate. But he made that election about abortion. He chose to do that. He said, if I get the majority in these two houses, I'm banning abortion.
There's so much to unpack here, Joy. Here's the thing. First off, when it comes to Andy Beshear, he did a good job. He is the second most popular governor in America, besides the governor of Hawaii. Like, he was a very, very popular guy. But this is an extremely red state. So it's not just that he did a good job, but he was running against Daniel Cameron, who arguably is the most loathed candidate amongst black people since the first time Donald Trump ran. I cannot stress this enough. I talked to plenty of people in Kentucky. That man has the blood of Breonna Taylor's hands. Her blood is on his hands. And people remember that. And black voters remember that. And Daniel Cameron couldn't run away from that. So Andy Beshear, by focusing on, hey, I've done a good job, and running against someone who is seen as the lowest of the low by most black voters, was a good combination. As far as Glenn Youngkin goes, you hear that sound? You hear that beeping? That's the truck. That's the bandwagon for Glenn Youngkin backing up away from Iowa and every other place. Okay, Glenn Youngkin was looking too far ahead. He was like, I'm going to win these elections. I'm going to be the reverse DeRay. I'm the guy in the vest. I play basketball in my front yard. I'm your cul-de-sac South Park Republican, and I'm going to be able to slide into the presidency. First off, no one is going to move ahead in the Republican Party until Donald Trump is gone. And second, you can't keep hiding what stinks. You can throw on all the cologne you can want. You can put on all the nice candidates you want. Abortion is a dead issue for Republicans. People don't like it, and Youngkin learned that lesson, but the rest of the party isn't going to figure it out.
Yeah, let me put up the map to that very point. Charlie, here it is. The states affirming abortion access, and the pluses on there are how much it won by.
Big.
How much it won by. In Vermont, it won by 54 points. In Kansas, it won by 18. Red Kansas. In Ohio, by 14. Montana, 6. It doesn't matter, Charlie, where you do it. It's always going to win, like marijuana legalization and raising the minimum wage. Also very popular things that Democrats could just put on the ballot and help themselves out.
Well, what we saw again today, yesterday, was the Republicans have two separate problems, and both of them, I think, are, explain how alarmed they are by the results. I mean, one of them, of course, is the abortion issue, which is not going away. They thought they could finesse it in Virginia. I mean, this was their, you said the cheat sheet. They thought they had cracked the code. What if they went with a 15-week ban, right? Because that polls better. The fact that that failed so spectacularly means they have to go back to the drawing board, and I don't know that they have a plan B beyond that. So that's one problem. The other problem is the MAGA problem, is the Donald Trump. Donald Trump was not on the ballot, but he won Kentucky by 26 points, and he went all in for Daniel Cameron. And the MAGA brand has been a weight on Republicans for years, and it was very dramatically a weight yesterday because Democrats hung the extreme MAGA label on the Republican candidate in a very, very red state, and it was successful. So if you're a Republican, you're sitting back going, oh my, despite all of the promising polls, the abortion issue is not going away, and 2024 is going to be all about MAGA and Donald Trump. I know there are a lot of Republicans that think that they can finesse the abortion issue, but yesterday was kind of a reality check. And by the way, I also agree with all of David's caveats about the limited predictive value of this election and how 2024 is different. But there's a reason why Fox News hosts and Republican consultants are kind of depressed today.
Well, I mean, Claire, a lot of people were wetting the bed, a bit moistening the bed, a bit, the Democrats, who just think Democrats do something about that New York Times Santa poll. But Biden wasn't on the ballot. This wasn't an election about Biden. It was in large part an election about Republicans or an election about incumbents in the case of Andy Beshear. Even in Mississippi, what I took out of that race, the Presley, how close is that Mississippi is not an unwinnable state if you have a good candidate. And if you didn't have voting problems, you can put a lot of sort of factors in. To me, one of the reasons Biden likely won't walk away from this race is that I think the campaign is probably confident that as long as abortion is out there and as long as Republicans are extreme on that, and even on things like LGBTQ issues. You had Virginia elect a first trans state senator. The culture war doesn't work for Republicans.
Yeah, the polling shows that Joe Biden and Donald Trump are not popular. Okay, fine, move on. This is about who is better for America. This isn't about who you like the most. This is a binary choice. This is a contrast. And what yesterday did is it showed us how to do the contrast. And by the way, we've got other players that are going to help here. I mean, they just put, by a unanimous vote, the Republican Party, Mike Johnson into the speaker's chair. The stuff he has said, the things he believes in, he is the poster child of the most extreme elements of the MAGA movement.
Yeah.
And scary extreme.
Yeah.
So they cannot run away from how far they have taken this. And here's what the bottom line is. People don't want government telling them what to do.
Boom.
They don't want to tell them what to read.
Yep.
They don't want to tell them how to raise their children.
That's right.
In terms of the trans issues. And they
And what to read. They don't want to be told what to read.
They don't want to, and this is where we have the ability to really talk about freedom with some real meaning and emotion. And you know what gets people out to vote? Emotion.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got to really focus on, like David said. It's not going to be enough that they've got these extreme positions if we don't motivate our voters to understand what's at stake.
All right, we're going to use that as a tease because the hostage situation begins right now. My distinguished panel is staying right here because there is still a slew of surprising outcomes and historic moments to talk about when the readout returns after this short break.